Hi. Thank you all for coming out today. And thank you to the Holliston Public Library and to the Holliston Cultural Council and to the Friends of the Holliston Library for hosting this show, and the Mass Cultural Council for supporting this. We're Sultana. In this show we're going to look at the roots of popular music in America through songs. So these are songs about music or musicians or songs that have a story that helps to tell a story of American popular music. And that story is a living story. It's not fixed to traditional styles or historic instruments. There's room for new songs and new interpretations of those old songs and new instruments playing those old songs, as well as new songs, maybe songs that we've written to celebrate our history. Throughout history, music was a social experience. Musicians made their living by performing at social gatherings. That started to change in 1877 when Edison invented the phonograph. The first commercial recordings came out on wax cylinders. Eventually, those were replaced with shellac discs, and those were eventually replaced with vinyl discs. But the idea of recording onto wax stuck. And as the phonograph became more and more a household item, as records became more and more popular, then as radio was introduced and radio stations started to play music, the experience of music became less dependent on social gatherings and increasingly an experience that could be had at home, sometimes by oneself. Musicians had to adapt to this. In order to ply their trade and even in order to survive, they had to find a way to have their music pressed into wax. 1, 2, 3. From the hills of eastern Tennessee came the sound of a country jamboree. 'Cause a man from Victor was in town, and he was looking for that authentic hillbilly sound. So he put an advertisement in the news, and the Mississippi brakeman came loose. A family sang while an auto car rang. Somebody said with a hillbilly twang, "Mr. Peter, here's a song you gotta hear. Get it sung like they'd sing it around here. It came from a man who was laying down tracks, Mr. Peter. Won't you press it in wax?" And from the flatlands of western Tennessee, along the river running down in New Orleans, came songs where life's stories were told, as the church houses rocked and the big wheels rolled. And from Memphis the word got around that a man who ran a studio was looking for the sound that brought the common thread of how life was led by the blacks and the whites. And then somebody said, "Mr. Phillips, here's a song you gotta hear. Get it sung with a growl and a sneer. It came from the bluesmen in broken down shacks, Mr. Phillips. Won't you press it in wax?" And from the fields came a hurler, from the pulpits a shout. From the pews came the blues sung by those down out. From the juke joints and jazz clubs and slums came the call from where cotton grows tall to Carnegie Hall. "Mr. Hammond, here's a song you gotta hear that's bound to keep playing through the years, being sung by someone who might slip through the cracks. Mr. Hammond, won't you press it in wax?" from a way of life that's all but disappeared, being sung by some prisoners with stripes on their backs. Mr. Lomax, won't you press any wax? It came from a hobo who was walking the tracks. Mr. Lomax, won't you press any wax? So that song mentions 5 different individuals who are not known for being musicians, who played a big part in shaping American popular music. Ralph Peer, Sam Phillips, John Hammond, and John and Ella Lomax. A lot of people aren't familiar with Ralph Peer. Excuse me. Good move. Ralph Peer was a talent scout for Victor Records in the 1920s. In 1927, he took his recording equipment south from New York. He was looking for musicians from the southern Appalachians. Peer had this idea that people living in the rural areas would be more likely to buy records from artists who had come from those same areas. And it turned out that he was right. In 2 weeks of recording sessions in the town of Bristol, on the border of Virginia and Tennessee, he discovered both the Carter family and Jimmie Rodgers, 2 of the earliest superstars of American popular music. That's known as the Big Bang of country music. This was 1927. The other 4 individuals mentioned in that last song are more familiar. Sam Phillips, founder of Sun Records. He discovered Howlin' Wolf, whose real name was Chester Burnett, a bluesman. He also discovered Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, and others. John Hammond, we mentioned him, the talent scout and producer for Columbia Records. He discovered Count Basie, Billie Holiday, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, and many, many others. And John and Ella Lomax, father and son folklorists. They conducted field recordings throughout the South and documented songs in the American oral tradition. Their work gave rise to the commercial genre of folk music that would emerge in the 1940s and 50s. In 1934, the Lomaxes were conducting a field recording at Sugar Land Prison in Texas. They recorded a prisoner named Ironhead Baker singing a song called St. James Hospital. That song is part of what's known as the rake cycle. That's a series of songs that are thought to have evolved out of an 18th century English ballad called The Unfortunate Rake. That song was brought to this country by settlers and immigrants, and over time it evolved. It appeared in Nova Scotia as a ballad called The Batgirl's Lament, and it appeared in the American West as the cowboy song, Streets of Laredo. What all of the songs of the rake cycle have in common is they are all a series of requests from a dying character as to what he or she wants at his or her funeral. Requests like beat the drum slowly, play the fife lowly, or have 6 jolly cowboys carry the coffin. In the Jazz and Blues Songbook, that song is known as St. James Infirmary Blues. Let me see if we can get through this one without coughing. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. As I walked out on the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy, wrapped in white hood, wrapped in white hood, and cold as the clay. He said, beat the drums slowly and play the fife alone. Sing the death march as you carry me along. Take me to the valley and throw the sod on. For I'm a young cowboy and I know I've done wrong. St. James Infirmary just to see my baby there. She was lying on a long white table, so pale, so cold, and so fair. Oh, let her go, oh, let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, 'cause she may search this whole wide world all over. But she's never gonna find another man like me. Now when I die, Lord, won't you lay down my body in my finest suit of clothes and a Stetson hat? Put a $20 gold piece in my watch chain, so that the boys will all know that I died standing pat. Yeah, and I want 6 crapshooters to be my pallbearers, and I want a chorus girl to sing me a song. Oh, and I want a jazz band to play on my hearse wagon. Let him raise hell as I roll along. Let her go. God bless her. Wherever, yeah, wherever she may be, 'cause she may search this whole wide world all over. Oh, but she is never gonna find another man like me. Thank you. The unfortunate Rick might have found its way into the blues through the cowboy song Streets of Laredo. You wouldn't know it from the history books, and you wouldn't know it from the Hollywood Westerns, but it turns out there were a lot of black cowboys. It's estimated that about 1 in 4 cowboys was of African descent. And it would make sense that those cowboys would have taken to singing songs about cowboys that they heard sung by other cowboys. But they would have sung those cowboy songs according to their own musical sensibility, rooted in the pentatonic scale used in African music. The pentatonic scale has fewer notes in it than the Western scale, which means there's more space between some of the notes, space that can be used for an expressive sliding around in a pitch or bending the notes. Over time, depending on where the emphasis is placed in those spaces and where it's heard, a song that's in a major key, like Streets of Laredo, could start to be heard as being in a minor key, like St. James Infirmary. And if in fact that's what happened, if in fact that was what happened, there would be a song with lyrics similar to Streets of Laredo, but in a minor key. And it turns out that St. James Hospital, sung by Ironhead Baker and recorded by the Lomaxes in 1934, is such a song. And that song might be the missing link that allowed an 18th century English ballad to be reborn as a blues. south here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. If you're ever going down in New Orleans, won't you let me come along? Whoops, I still remember I first heard of in a song. Since then I've been there many times, on in my dreams, and my heart will always move in New Orleans. Oh, let me wake up down on Basin Street to the sound of Dixieland. Crowds will dance and stamping feet, snapping fingers, clapping hands. So let me be part of that scene I've seen so often in my dreams. For my heart will always be in New Orleans. So if you're heading down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico, won't you let me come along to that place I long to go? I heard about it in a song, and I've seen it in my dreams, and my heart will always be in New Orleans. Oh, I've been down with these Chicago blues, been soothed by Memphis soul, been thick Appalachian folk songs, dark as West Virginia cold. Now let me be part of that scene I've seen so often in my dreams. For my heart will always be in New Orleans. Yeah, my heart will always be in New Orleans. Thank you. The relationship between New Orleans and jazz is well known. Back in the late 1800s, the forerunners of the blues, the field hollers and spirituals and African songs in the Mississippi Delta region came down the river, along with the ragtime music that was popular in the day. And in New Orleans, those styles combined with the French music of the native Creole population, the Latin rhythms of nearby Cuba, and the Italian music of the more recent Sicilian immigrants, and that formed jazz. The origin of the blues is a bit more muddy. The term blue was used to mean a state of sadness or depression long before it was used to describe a style of music. And there were songs with varying degrees of similarity to what we now call blues before there was a musical style known as blues. The first song to be written and published with blues in the title that also has a musical pattern that's considered characteristic of the blues was called... Huh? Close. I Got the Blues. Written and published in 1909 by New Orleans musician Anthony Maggio. But that song's not a blues. It's a ragtime number. Only one little part of the song has that musical pattern that's considered characteristic of the blues. The rest of it does not. Maggio claimed to have gotten the title and the melody from an elderly black guitar player. And that unknown guitar player might have been playing his own interpretation of an earlier song called I've Got the Blues, written and published in 1901 by Chris Smith and Elmer Bowman. That song is also a ragtime number, but that song doesn't have that musical pattern that's considered characteristic of the blues. The singer Ma Rainey and the composer W.C. Handy both recalled first hearing blues in 1902 and 1903 respectively. And Jelly Roll Morton is known to have composed New Orleans blues and Jelly Roll blues sometime between 1904 and 1910. He didn't publish those songs until years later, but they're not in the running for the oldest published blues song, but because we know the approximate date he wrote them, we have a pretty good sense that the blues first appeared as a style we now know sometime between 1904 and 1910. Apparently there's some new performer that has the audacity to call himself Jelly Roll. And I've had people say, oh, is that any connection to the Jelly Roll that's around today? And I'm like, no, this is Jelly Roll Morton. He's an important person. not to deny the importance of whoever this other guy is.
All the tattoos.
He's probably sold a lot more records than I have, I guess. There's a historic site in the Mississippi Delta region called Dockery Farms, or Dockery Plantation. Anybody been there? Anybody been to the Mississippi Delta? No? Dockery Farms was a sharecropping plantation. It was established in the years after the Civil War. They grew cotton there. But the reason it's a historic site is because of some of the people who live there. Maybe you've heard of some of these people. Charlie Patton, Willie Brown, Son House, Tommy Johnson, Robert Johnson, Howlin' Wolf, Pop Staples, Honey Boy Edwards, all well-known bluesmen. And they all lived on or near Dockery at the same time. So they would have jam sessions going late into the night, and they'd entertain the tenants. That's sort of like Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven all living next door to each other and having jam sessions in their living room, if you can think of it that way. According to legend, Charlie Patton learned how to play the guitar from a mysterious figure named Henry Sloan. We don't know anything at all about Henry Sloan. We don't even know for sure if he was a real person. Some historians think they've identified his death certificate, but for all we know, that could have been somebody else named Henry Sloan. Other legends hold that Tommy Johnson and Robert Johnson both learned how to play the guitar by selling their souls to the devil. We'll have to confirm that with the devil when we meet him someday. That may not be too long, the way things are going. This song's called Dockery Farm. The names of those bluesmen are scattered throughout the song in one form or another. She said, wait for me on Dockery Farm, that's how I'm wound up here. The days turned into weeks and months, and now it's been more than a year. But I learned to work the fields, torn the soul straight from the shoes. On Dockery Plantation, harvesting the blues. Down on Dockery Plantation, you know the work don't ever stop, cause it takes a lot of pen to raise that barbed and bitter crop. You can hear the pickers moaning, night and day you hear that song. And the hurting don't have a season, cause the blues go all year round. Now when you arrive at Dockery Farm, you can talk to Henry Sloan. If you've got nothing left to lose, he'll tell you where to get a loan. And he'll teach you how to pick and how to barter with your soul. But when you're dealing with the devil, boy, you always wind up in a hole. Cause on Dockery Plantation, you can't go anywhere but down. As you work the fields tilled by Charlie Patton, Willie Brown, swing blade knives and broken bottles. Those are the tools they had to use to slide beneath the gravel when they harvested the blues. just like anything that grows, the blues starts out as a seed. It could be loneliness or jealousy, prejudice or need, a cheating love around a holy wolf. On the outside of a happy home. Those are the staples that you need to get the blues to start growing. And there's a house full of those bad seeds, and they pour out like a flood. And the air is thick as honey, boy, as you toil in the mud. Oh, it tears you up inside as your heart is being pruned. And even Johnson and Johnson won't stop the bleeding from now on. See, on dock or a plantation, there's a debt you gotta pay. You gotta ease the pain of others if you wanna leave someday. That means spending a lifetime feeling what life goes. On dock or a plantation, harvesting the blues. Charlie Patton is considered the father of the Delta blues. Not much is known about his childhood, but historians agree he probably had some American Indian ancestry. And it's been suggested that his rhythms and his vocal stylings might have been influenced by Native American music that he heard as a child on the reservation. So there's a good case to be made that American Indian music is also a component of the blues. The story of immigrants is a big part of the story of American popular music. In the early 1800s, a large number of German, Czech, and Polish immigrants settled in Texas, which was then a part of Mexico. They brought with them their music and their dances and their instruments. And over time, the native Tejano population incorporated those polkas and waltzes and the accordion into their traditional rancheras. That gave rise to a style known as norteño in northern Mexico. And it gave rise to conjunto and Tejano music in this country. Lydia Mendoza was one of the pioneers of Tejano music, and she was one of the first popular Spanish language recording artists in this country. Narciso Martinez was an accordion player. He is known as the father of conjunto music. He developed a new approach to his instrument that emphasized the melody notes played on his right hand, while his partner in the duo, Santiago Almeida, would hold down the bass and rhythm lines on a double-string baritone guitar called a bajo sexto. Enrique Valentin was the owner of a furniture store in Brownsville, Texas. In the early 1930s, a number of record labels started to pursue a similar marketing strategy in rural Texas that Victor Records had in the Appalachians in the 1920s. That is, they operated on the premise that people living in rural Texas would be more likely to buy records made by rural Texan musicians. Enrique Valentin had a lot of contacts who were musicians, so he was able to serve as a talent broker to the agents from these record companies when they came to southern Texas looking for Tejano and conjunto musicians to record. Now I'm going to attempt something in a less familiar style to us, to me. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Lydia went to a station in old San Antonio. She strummed a guitar and sang to a microphone. She played songs she played for the people who worked on the land. And markets and ranches along the Rio Grande. Enrique talked up a new sound, he heard it as furniture store. Narciso played the accordion like no one played it before. Santiago held down the bass line on a bajo sexto. Enrique said his music would be on the radio. And conjuntos played on the air in the taberna. And más que polka in the ranchero. and Poland, the settlers came along. They brought their music and dances to Texas and Mexico. And the native Tejanos heard them play those waltzes and polkas. Started putting that old past sound into Mexican folk songs. And conjuntos played on the air in the taberna. And más que poco de polka in the rancho. And Tejanos played F&Os and fiestas. And there was more than a little polka in music classes. Thank you. There are chapters in history that are unpleasant to talk about, but we can't ignore them. They're part of the story and part of the reason things are the way they are. If we ignore those chapters, we fail to acknowledge how they've shaped our attitudes and our culture. But by atoning for those shameful chapters, we can atone for past injustices and start to heal the divisions they brought about and hopefully start to come together as a people. Back around 1830, an actor by the name of Thomas Daddy Rice, put burnt cork on his face and created a character based on a song and dance he saw being done by a handicapped black stable hand. That was the beginning of blackface minstrelsy. The character he created was Jim Crow. The character would perform a song called Jump Jim Crow that consisted of multiple verses sung in a mocking black dialect and set to an Old English melody. In addition to being a cruel mockery, the song was also an expression of anti-elitism. And for whichever of those reasons, or both, it resonated with the supporters of Andrew Jackson. The song became very popular. Thomas Rice went on to become a wealthy and famous man and inspire hundreds of imitators. And minstrelsy went on to become a form of hateful propaganda, even more so as the debate over slavery intensified, and even more than that in the aftermath of the Civil War. When art and music are used to spread hatred, the hatred can become ingrained in the culture, can become a part of the culture. As years pass and as generations pass and as hopefully the hatred comes to be seen for being the evil that it is, any art or music that was used to spread that hatred can no longer be appreciated as art or entertainment. It becomes nothing more than a grotesque relic that's only fit to be kept in a museum. And that's what happened to a lot of the songs from minstrelsy. The minstrel shows were a vehicle through which a representation of black music was introduced to a large number of non-black Americans. And even as the shows became increasingly weaponized as a form of propaganda, even as they became increasingly degrading towards African Americans and other minorities, the performers in those shows would compete with one another for what they imagined was authenticity in their representation of black music. So what they were insulting and degrading, they were at the same time idealizing. And over time, their goal became to sound black. But the qualities in the music that they idealized, they attributed to the irrelevant characteristic of skin color, rather than to the hard work and passion and devotion of individual black artists, or the openness at the time of black culture generally. And that's a big part of what racism and prejudice is right there, taking away credit or blame from individuals and reassigning that credit or blame to a whole population based on irrelevant criteria, like the color of their skin or their ethnic background. Sadly, we're seeing that's still a part of our world. Excuse me just a moment. This is called Thomas Royce and his Traveling Review. They're gathered at the playhouse on the square. On Main Street there's a murmur of excitement in the air. The people are bought for the show that's coming through is Thomas Rice and his Traveling Review. There's a smile in store for those of every age. As the wilds of Ethiopia part are loose upon the stage, and a song and dance, so many more will be inspired to do by Thomas Rice and his traveling review. It's good for some fun for everyone. Spectacle to the children fun. Good Christians will have themselves such a good time. Even the devil will join in the crowd with his top hat and worn baggy clothes. Mr. Rice will wheel and tap on his heels and on his toes. So come on, get your tickets, don't miss your chance to catch Thomas Rice and his traveling review. Speeches by grand eloquent buffoons, and banjos have played their old plantation tunes. Jim and Dandy will be there, and Lucy Long with Thomas Rice and his traveling review. It's good for some fun filled with slapstick and puns. The legacy will do the children proud. Good Christians will laugh till their laughs turn to tears. Soon even the devil will be laughing out loud at how fiddler and tambour and bones, crudely colored by burnt cork and dark freakish tones, will be burned in the marrow of these people who've seen Thomas Rice and his traveling. Thomas Rice and his traveling. Thank you. At this point in the show, we need to make a quick mention of Stephen Foster. Stephen Foster is an important figure in American popular music. You could say he was probably the first great American songwriter. And some say Stephen Foster marks the beginning of the American music industry. Stephen Foster wrote some minstrel songs, and they became very popular. Mostly, he wrote parlor songs, which were the sentimental ballads that were popular at the time. Influenced by European light classical music, they were considered the higher form of popular music, as opposed to minstrel songs, which were the lower form. Now, some suggest Foster also wrote in the third style that was a combination of the two. And these were idyllic, sentimentalized depictions of slave life in the plantation South. And these songs were also sung in minstrel shows, and these songs also became very popular. Foster apologists argue that these so-called plantation songs depicted slaves in a more human and sympathetic way. But regardless of that, and whatever his intentions might have been, by creating a sentimentalized, idyllic portrayal of slave life in the plantation South, he was wittingly or not contributing to some of the music of the time being a form of racist propaganda. We have to edit out all this coughing. Sorry about this. I'm trying to cough and I'm not talking. I'm not singing. Traditionally, it's held that the blues evolved out of the field hollers and spirituals and African songs of the Mississippi Delta region. But there's an alternate theory that suggests that the blues instead evolved out of black vaudeville, as it was performed in a circuit of theaters in the late 1890s and early 1900s. A guy named Butler May was a popular performer on that circuit. Even though he's barely remembered today, in his lifetime he was immensely popular. When Butler May came to town, the theaters would be packed, there would be lines going on into the streets. Now all we have are copies of real old newspaper clippings. Don't have a lot of clarity to them. Butler May was a child prodigy. From an early age, he shared the bill with artists like Ma and Pa Rainey and Jelly Roll Morton. There's Jelly Roll again. It turned out that Butler May was a natural comedian as well, and soon he was headlining his own shows under the name String Beans because he was tall and thin. By the autumn of 1914, Butler May had taken his act up north. He was performing at the Monogram Theater in Chicago, one of the most prestigious venues on the black vaudeville circuit. His signature number was a performance piece about the Titanic. In the piece, he would stand at the piano and sway back and forth and play a rollicking music to show the ship rocking on the water. Then he'd slowly sink at the piano and play a big descending scale to show the ship sinking. And all the while, he'd be singing about how he was on the Titanic. But he was able to swim to safety because he had Elgin movements in his hips with a 20-year guarantee. Elgin, you know what Elgin is? Yeah, Elgin was a watch brand. The movements are the mechanical parts of a watch. Elgin watches were advertised as coming with a 20-year guarantee on the movements. And that innuendo that Butler May used. After his lifetime, it turns up again and again in the blues, from before Robert Johnson all the way up to Buddy Guy in the 1960s. And it's known among musicologists as the Elgin movement's metaphor. But when Butler May brought his act up north, the northern audiences had never seen anything like him before. He was spontaneous, he improvised much of his act, and he was vulgar. The black press criticized him for being too blue. Blue being a vaudeville term for being vulgar on stage, probably related to the blue laws. And it may or may not be coincidental that there are some who consider Butler May to have been the original bluesman. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Montgomery, Alabama, on a hot summer day, just before the sun went down. A kid was playing piano on the back of a train, and a crowd of people gathered round. You hear an old song that didn't seem so old, at the beginning of a story that'd be left untold. But if you listen, some say you might still know what you played today. The name was Butler May. Soon he was touring the South, playing a black vaudeville stage. He was tall and lean and he called him string blues, and his act was all the rage. Wherever he played, he would draw a crowd because his songs and quote made people laugh out loud. Till the critics wrote in their review that Butler May was cool. Some say Butler May have been playing the blues the way the blues get played today. But he lived and died a long time ago, so nobody can really say. They say he was the funniest man alive, but he was hardly more than a kid. Some say Butler May have invented the blues, but nobody knows if he did. Nobody knows if he did. From Atlanta to Louisville, from Chicago to Harlem, string beans from the houses down. He sang the Titanic in a piano log, and he sang Alabama Bound. But when he took the stage, people all agreed he had the kind of moves that were guaranteed. Till the critics wrote in their review that Butler May was cool. From Jacksonville, Florida, one November date, there was Butler May was gone. He was being pledged to a fraternal lodge when a handsome ritual went wrong. He was just 23, much too young, at the beginning of a song that'd be left unsung. And if you listen, some say you might still know what he played today. Down in Georgia and Florida, he played on the bill with the Rangers and Joe Roll. And up north in Chicago, a mob would gather on State Street whenever string beans did the stroll. Some say Butler May have invented the blues, but nobody can really say. Cause he never recorded or published his songs, there's no one left who heard him play. They say he was the funniest man alive, but he was hardly more than a kid. Some say Butler May have invented the blues, but nobody knows if he did. Nobody knows if he Thank you. In the years before Butler May, in the years before W.C. Handy, the composer, who was nicknamed the father of the blues, A style appeared that some music writers are now calling proto-blues. These were ragtime Tin Pan Alley tunes that had evolved out of certain African-American folk songs, like Frankie and Johnny and Stack O'Lee. Only a small number of these proto-blues songs have been identified. The most prolific composer of them was Huey Cannon. Huey Cannon was a Tin Pan Alley songwriter. He's best remembered for writing the jazz standard, Bill Bailey, Won't You Please Come Home. Tin Pan Alley was a row of publishing houses in New York. It was established around 1885 by Irish and Jewish immigrants. These publishing houses had staff songwriters, and they churn out songs to be sold as sheet music to theaters and traveling shows. The songs of Tin Pan Alley formed the bulk of what we call the American songbook. Huey Cannon started out playing piano in the saloons of Jackson, Michigan. He probably also started out drinking in the saloons of Jackson, Michigan, because he was an alcoholic from an early age. And sadly, that led to an early death at the age of 35 in Toledo around 1910. It's called Huey Cannon's Blues. One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four. Now do you hear that old piano rolling out a ragtime melody from the bars where Huey Cannon used to play, to the rhythm of the shots of gin and whiskey going down, a good time and song that's still that song today, where the rounders and the railroad men, the gamblers and the whores told their stories from the darker side of life. And a kid at the piano heard a trumpet at the bar describe how he'd been tossed out by his wife. Now up on Tin Pan Alley, Huey Cannon's got a song, and Mrs. Bailey's moaning all night long. She had a her linen man a pair of walking shoes. Now any minstrel knows the tune of Huey Cannon's blues, and it's 60 miles Detroit to Toledo. You can go that distance any way you choose. And there's a lot of men who've fallen going sideways down there. Many minstrel knows the tune of Huey Cannon's blues. From Jackson to Manhattan, Huey Cannon made his name, writing music for the publishers to sell. Some songs he wrote for parties, and some songs he wrote for shows, and some nights he spent locked in a rolling cell. Cause Huey Cannon had been drinking hard from the time he was a kid, and as a man his drinking drove away his wife. Oh, he drank away the songs he wrote and the money that he made. And at 35 he drank away his life. But back on Tin Pan Alley, Huey Cannon had a song where a widow mourned a man who had done her wrong. Fast living bad brother with him, and he had to pay his dues. And every minstrel knows the tune of Huey Cannon's blues. And it was 35 years from Detroit to Toledo, going by the way of pills and blues. And there's a lot of men who've fallen living sideways down their road. Many minstrel knows the tune of Huey Cannon's blues. Yeah, many minstrel knows the tune of Huey Cannon's blues. Won't you come home, Bill Bailey? Won't you come home? She moaned the whole night long. I'll do the cooking, honey, and I'll pay the rent. I know I've done it wrong. Remember that rainy night, dear? time comes, won't you please come home? About the collectible records put out by Elvis. The collectible single is called the Sun Session 45s. They were put out by Elvis on Sun Records before he was signed to RCA in 1955. And these Sun 45s are what a good amount of money you can find. You can find one in your basement or cellar or grandma's trunk or something. There's a little thing with the Sun label on it. It says Elvis. Dust it off. Take good care of it. But listen to it, because they're really good. The song is called Sun Session 45.
Sun Sessions.
Ready?
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4.
She said, what you spending all the money for? I was dusty old record to the second-hand store. I said, that's alright, mama, don't criticize. I come home and feel good cries. We run out on the night. Listening to the Sun Session 45. They said it's worth maybe 15 grand to put your best dress on. Take my hand, turn up the volume, turn out the light. It's gonna be good, rockin' tonight. We working buzz like bees in a hive. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Listen to the Sun Session 45. Listen to the Sun Session 45. Only smoke and sex alive. Listen to the Sun Session 45. Oh, how me and the devil went for a spin. Another came up, now we're cashing in. The man doesn't care, just a real and rock. She was listening to the Beatles on Broken Block. Our ship's coming in, it's finally arrived. We're listening to the Sun Session 45. Things are looking up, the future's looking fine. It won't matter if the sun won't shine. You're riding home through the grass too. Underneath the W, and back up at more scenic drive. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Only smoke and six alive. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Boom of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and proven true. Little moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and blue. On at night, the stars were shining bright, and they whispering, right, you don't have to say goodbye. Oh, blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and said goodbye. What days turn weeks, time will tell. Some things in life are too good to sell. On they did the milk car whooping all night long, and they're too much better than just getting by. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Listening to the Sun Session 45. Duke Ellington once said all music is folk music. Maybe from today's perspective, we might want to say all music is popular music. because folk music has become just a name of just another genre, like country or rock. And a lot of the distinctions between these commercial genres doesn't have very much to do with music. It has more to do with things like what part of the country you're from, what kind of accent you have, class, education, ethnicity, how much you pay in dues to some local folk club or some other kind of club. Popular music implies the music of the people, the music of all of us, music that tells our stories and marks the events in our lives. Some years ago, I was at a show and a woman requested that I play the song Stardust, the old standard by Hoagie Carmichael. After the show, she told me that back when she was a lot younger, during World War II, she and her brother would go out dancing to the big bands. The last song of the night, the band would play Stardust, and her brother would always save that dance for her. Then he was off to war to fight on the Italian front, and he never came back. And so from that day on, from that moment on, she always requested Stardust in his memory. It's called Last Dance to Stardust. One, two, three, four. Playing Stardust as they danced on the floor. When the dance was over, he was off to war. The next day she was over here and he was over there. It was a last dance to Stardust that they shared. She read the letter that he sent as he marched towards Rome. She read the letter saying he was never coming home. She prayed that there was some mistake, that somehow he was spared, but it was a last dance to Stardust that they shared. Last dance to Stardust, vivid in her memory. The last dance to Stardust that was her reverie. And the sound of winds and violins will always fill the air of the last dance to Stardust that they share. Now people come into this world and people pass away, but the music that they make for an eternity will stay. Like a ripple on the ocean, like a true love once declared, like the last dance to Stardust that they share. Last dance to Stardust, vivid in her memory. A last dance to Stardust that once her reverie. And the sound of winds and violins will always fill the air of a last dance to Stardust that they share. And she said to me, this memory I can't let disappear. She asked me, won't you play that song from way back when I longed to hear? That would take me back once more to 1943. And his last dance to Stardust with me. His last dance to Stardust with me. Sometimes I wonder why I spend a lonely night dreaming of a song. The melody once I reverie, and I am once again with you. Though I dream in vain, in my heart it will remain my stardust melody, the memory of those refrains.
Wow.
So popular music tells our stories and marks the events in our lives, not just global historic events like World War II, but our everyday experiences. By sharing those stories and experiences, individuals come to identify as a people, as a culture, whether it's from sharing the stories of their heroes, or retelling the stories their heroes told, or from collectively atoning for past injustices. So the voices of storytellers, of artists and musicians, play an important part in shaping our identity. And in a country as divided as ours is, we need those voices to remind us that there is an American culture. It's in the stories and the experiences that we share. But there's a tendency to try to stifle and control those voices. There are politicians and religious leaders who want to determine what goes into the stories and who hears them. There are business leaders who want to keep the arts subordinate and subservient to business interests. And there are independent entrepreneurs, aspiring kingmakers who want to further their own ambitions and the careers of friends or family members by keeping others from being heard. Blind Alfred Reed was a street performer from West Virginia in the early 1900s. He was a singer, a songwriter, a preacher, and a fiddle player. He became popular around his hometown of Princeton, and in 1927 he was invited by Ralph Peer, remember him, to participate in what would turn out to be the historic Bristol sessions, where Jimmy Rogers and the Carter family would be discovered. Alfred Reed traveled to Bristol. He recorded some sides and they were well received. He went on to record several more times over the next few years. And he attained a certain level of regional success. Some of his songs are even still sung today. But then the Depression hit. The record companies were no longer able or willing to invest in developing rural acts. And Alfred Reed returned to being a street performer in his hometown of Princeton, West Virginia, until 1937, when the town passed a new ordinance prohibiting street music. Some years later, Alfred Reed died. And according to some sources, quite probably or quite possibly an urban legend, Alfred Reed died of starvation. Now, others, including his family members, say that that's not true, that that's just an urban legend, and we certainly hope that's not true. We hope he lived out his days comfortably. But regardless of that, by denying him his passion, his livelihood, weren't they metaphorically starving him anyway? And weren't they starving all of those around him from hearing his unique voice? We're going to leave you with this last song. I want to thank you again very much for coming out today and listening. I hope you enjoyed the program. If anybody has any questions and wants to talk afterwards, happy to talk. We have an album that came out earlier this year. It's our new debut album. A couple of these songs are on it. I think a couple of these are just one. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, we do other programs as well. Thank you again, Holliston Library. Thank you again, Holliston TV. Hope you enjoy the show on TV. And the Cultural Council. All right, this is called Blind Alfred Reed. Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3, 4. West Virginia town, a man took on a fiddle, and people gathered around. The depression had ended, but times were still tough. Jobs were hard to find, and they didn't pay enough. People were struggling, they had mouths to feed, and they could please spare some coins for Blind Alfred. Alfred Reed was born blind, yet learned to survive by playing music and doing a little preaching on the side. And that's all he needed. He kept buying life, take care of his family, 5 kids and a wife. Times were often hard, they were seldom in need, cause people paid played by Barney Delfruit. Flying African Queen played his songs on the corner, like musician performer, had been doing it for so long. He always had a way to keep food on the table, as long as he was able to play someone a song. Then in 1927, down in Bristol, Virginia, came word that Victor Records was looking for musicians, for the players and singers, converged on that town, and they laid down the roots of the American sound. And among those who took part, planting that seed were the Carters, Jimmy Rogers, and Barney Delfruit. Back in that West Virginia town, new laws passed that busking would no longer be allowed. That's what some business owners wanted. They got to have their say without music on the streets, so their customers away. Some politicians thought property values would go up. People didn't see a blind man collecting money in the cup. Still others thought that they alone ought to have the final word, and what musicians should be listened to, and which one should not be heard. They were all consumed with a hunger for power and greed, and that brought starvation to Delfruit. Flying African Queen played his songs on the corner, like musicians before had been doing for so long. He always had a way to keep food on the table, as long as he was able to play someone a song. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.